Well, I want to welcome everybody today to the EntreprenHer Show. And as always, I am delighted to interview our next guest. My name is Heidi Richards Mooney, and I'm your host today. I want to tell you a little bit about our special guest. JoAnna Brandi is a consultant, public speaker, and author, and so much more. JoAnna is the author of 2 books on customer loyalty, Winning at Customer Retention, 101 Ways to Keep Them Happy, Keep Them Loyal, and Keep Them Coming Back, and Building Customer Loyalty, 21 Essential Elements in Action, as well as a gift book on positive thinking, 54 Ways to Stay Positive in a Changing, Challenging, and sometimes negative world. She is currently writing From Positive Thinking to Positive Doing, Positivity Practices that Help You Turn Happiness into a Habit. Say that fast 3 times. Since 1998, JoAnna has inspired CEOs and key executives all over the country to take better care of their customers and employees and to see a tangible return on their happiness. Her company's core mission is to create positive, customer caring companies that thrive, where the employees are happy and motivated, the customers are happy and loyal, and the competitors are nervous. Wow. Welcome, JoAnna.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited. I hope I didn't mess up the titles of your books too much.
Okay, they're very long.
We'll talk about them a little bit more throughout the topic today. But I want to first talk about, because your website's called Return on Happiness. And on Sunday, March 20th, the world celebrated International Day of Happiness. Yeah. So tell us how you celebrated and recognized the day.
Well, I did that 2 ways. One was personally and the other one was professionally. Let me tell you about what we did professionally first. We did a lot of research on what was going on all around the world. And for 2 weeks working up to the day, we posted on Facebook, we posted on Twitter. I've got a number of Facebook pages, and we sent out little hints and little memes to get people really, really excited about Happiness Day and encourage them to do something in their own communities, because it's something that you want to spread around. And next year we'll be doing something locally. This year I had already signed up for a 4-day retreat, and that's a tough choice. You know, I wanted to do something personal for myself because I really needed a few days away. I'm working on this huge project, and the opportunity to go to this particular place with this particular teacher really worked into what I was doing. But I had a little bit of an emotional conflict. There was like, oh my goodness, you know, should I be out there with my peeps doing something with happiness, or should I be doing something that will have a longer lasting effect for me, which is to get me nice and relaxed and open me up a little bit to keep writing. I'm taking a 2-day positive leadership course that I've been presenting in person, and I'm working with a company to help me turn it into a 10 to 12 unit e-learning course, you know, with videos and with cartoons and with illustrations and with quizzes. And it's for me, it's the biggest project I've ever worked on, and I must say that it has been challenging. So I decided to go away on retreat for 4 days. And what I did was I encouraged the entire group of people I was with. We were singing together. And singing has a way of just, you know, not only relaxing, but opening me up. So I told everybody about International Happiness Day and asked them to all, you know, just as they were singing that day, go to their hearts and connect with all the people around the world that were celebrating Happiness Day. Because, you know, we're all connected anyway, and we can do that intentionally. So on that day, I and the 28 other people I was with connected in intentionally with what was going on around the world to spread more happiness.
So you actually did do something for your business.
I did.
If you think about it, you know, you're promoting this feeling, this thought, this movement that's so important today, especially. Yeah. And the fact is that the 27 or 28 people that you touch will now go and touch that many millions of people.
That's the whole point of what I do, is that every leader has such impact. I deal mostly with leadership, and I have been for my whole career. I do work with people that are in the customer service departments, but primarily in organizations. I work with the leadership because they have the most influence with the people in the organization. And that's the most amazing thing, is that if you get one leader to understand how to lead more positively, how to enrich the lives of their employees, so the employees then have the energy to enrich the lives of the customers, that's really where that return on happiness comes.
So tell us a little bit more about return on happiness. What does the phrase mean, and how did you come up with that as a business?
Well,
a brand for your business.
Well, again, because I've been doing this for so long, I kept hearing people talk about ROI, return on investment. But when you use the term ROI, you are almost always referring to financial investment. And I needed to find a way to talk to, I work a lot with CEOs. So I needed to learn to find a language that they understood. Well, they understand ROI. So I thought if I did a play on ROH, I could catch their ears and get them to understand that there is not just there's a return on the emotional investment you put into business. There is a return on the happiness that you bring, because happiness is contagious. And when I talk about happiness, I'm not talking about, the smiley little yellow face. I'm talking about any positive emotion, because any positive emotion we experience changes our entire body. And primarily for business, the productivity goes up, performance goes up. But for me, I think more importantly, you get 3 to 10 times more creativity in an organization when there's more positivity happening. So when we focus on creating more of what we call positive capacity, the ability to experience more positive emotions, the opportunity to experience more positive emotions, people just become more creative, because it literally opens up the two sides of the brain and has them talk to one another. So there is a phenomenon has been labeled the broaden and build response. So when you're happy, or you're curious, or you're peaceful, or you're joyful, or you're, any one of 10, 15, 20 different positive experiences, the chemicals that the body produces opens up the learning centers in the brain, and you become more creative, your memory gets better, your peripheral vision, you can actually physically see more when you're in the state of positive emotion. So there's all this cool stuff that happens to this human being. We forget, I think, in businesses, we have human resources, we have human capital, we have all this, but we're human beings, and we have these human bodies that respond in a specific way to a specific set of emotions.
And you know what? And I agree with you 100%. I think that we don't focus enough on the positivity and the happiness. And I wanted to go back a step when you talked about your retreat, because I wanted to make a comment about, as a leader and as a person who is sharing this information with the world, by doing what you did, you're showing people the importance of this self-care and walking the talk. And, if we take care of ourselves and we're happy, everybody around us is happy. Because the old saying, when mama ain't happy, nobody.
I love that saying. Yeah.
And I think it's true. I think that we set the tone in everything that we do. I think women in particular, but I think in general, people, leaders set the tone. Because I can tell you, when I had a retail florist for 28 years. I still have the florist, but we're now doing more. We have a warehouse, so we don't have a walk-in store or anything anymore. But we had a company meeting. We'd been in business several years, and one of the women in the group said, one of the employees said, we can always tell when you're in a good mood when you walk in the door, because it's the way you walk in the door. They could hear it in my footsteps, whether I was walking like happy. And I mean, I'm a very positive person. I might have 2 bad days a year. People think it's weird, but I'm just, happiness is a choice. I truly believe that. I mean, I think there's some things, we all go through stuff, that brings us down. But I said to myself, you know what? That's really such great insight. It helped me be a better leader. Just knowing that, because I made a more concerted effort to never walk in the door with those kind of footsteps. So, I'm sure that's the kind of work that you do. So I want to talk.
I'll speak to that for just a quick second, because you're making a really important point, and I want our listeners to hear this. We broadcast our emotions whether we know it or not. And I have never met anyone in any organization that doesn't say the same thing about the boss, by the way, that I can tell my boss's mood. I can tell by the way they walk. I can tell by the, the movement of their heads. I can tell by the looks on their faces. I was training a group just last week, and we had a really long conversation about this, because a lot of, especially top executive people, they're very focused. And they're usually, many of them walk into the office in the morning because they're focused. Not that they're angry, because they're focused. But the facial expression of being focused on a single item that you're thinking about very much looks a lot like the facial expression of anger. And without that smile, without that, the universal signal that this is friend and not foe. Remember, the body, we haven't had an upgrade in 350,000 years up here. There are certain facial expressions that signal this is friend. And when somebody is so focused that their face is all screwed up, people interpret that as anger. And because we are always broadcasting our emotions as leaders, we have to be really careful what channel we're tuned to.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. And I'm just sharing the last 30 seconds. I love the way you talk. You said we haven't had an upgrade in the last 350,000 years. I think that's priceless. And you're so right. You know what I want to do? I want to talk a little bit about workplace happiness, and because that's what we're focusing on today primarily. I mean, we have to be happy in all aspects of life. I think it's important. But, when you're talking about working with leaders, I know that you have, I read an article that you'd written about the workplace happiness is a business decision and the 8 tips that will increase business resilience. Would you mind sharing those 8 tips with everyone?
Sure. I would really love to, because when we create more positive emotion in a company, we develop something that psychologists call psychological capital. And one of the pieces of psychological capital is resilience, which every company needs. So the first one is actually optimism, because optimism can be learned. It is a skill that we can learn. My teacher was Dr. Martin Seligman. Before I had the opportunity to take happiness coaching with him, I had read his book, Learned Optimism. And for me, it was a life-changing book. And optimism and pessimism are explanatory styles. So it's the way we explain the world to ourselves. So I often use the example of, we're both here in Florida. And of course, this is tourist season. So tourists coming in and out all the time. And members of my family have been, snowbirds or visiting and things like that. And members of your family, I'm sure. Everybody has people coming and visiting. And I always say you can tell an optimist from a pessimist when it rains. Because the pessimist says, it always rains on my vacation. Every time I come here, it rains. They take a temporary situation and they make it pervasive. They make it sound permanent. It's always this happens to me every time I come here. So there's an attitude towards the world that says, they're kind of out to get me, and it's always going to happen. That permanent pervasiveness sort of seeps in. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And an optimist might say, they probably need the rain. Isn't that wonderful? I hear they have great museums, or let's go to the movies, without having any charge on it at all, because a negative situation for an optimist is temporary and specific. It's happening Tuesday, by Wednesday it'll be okay. So it's the way we see the world, and you can pick it up really quickly in somebody's language. So that optimism in the workplace really helps, because I've never seen a company get out of a mess because they were pessimists. When you have to, when times are tough, and let's face it, you and I have seen a few tough times in business where you know as a business owner that, wow, I'm not sure how we're going to get out of this. Well, you get out of it better if you have optimism about getting out of it. And because we infect people with our emotions. I'll tell you, during the recession, 2008, 2009, it was really interesting. It was really interesting to see how many leaders chose to fill their organizations with fear, as opposed to filling their organizations with optimism. Very
Right?
different results.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So another one is gratitude. And gratitude is so powerful because gratitude, I think, of all the emotions, I think gratitude is the one that can shift you over to happiness or positivity quickest than anything else. I mean, it goes so deep, and I'm talking about, not like thank you, but a real sense of gratitude. In fact, I encourage people when they are going to a state of gratitude to take their right hands and put it over their heart, which actually begins the flow of oxytocin in the body. Oxytocin is what's known as the tend to befriend chemical. So it already starts changing how the physiology is working. And then when we deeply go to gratitude, really, really, really be grateful. Grateful that we have food on our table. Grateful that we have roofs over our heads. Grateful that we have family or friends or businesses, things to occupy our minds. If you see people that don't work, you'll stop complaining about work. If you see people with no food, you don't take your food for granted. And I think that's the key. The other thing that I learned that has been so revolutionary for me personally is that when you're experiencing a positive emotion, the neurons in the left prefrontal cortex light up. And when you are experiencing a negative emotion, the neurons in the right prefrontal cortex light up. They can't be lighting up at the same time. So when you are in the middle of, I'll speak personally, when I am in the middle of a negative emotion, because there's a genetic component to this, and I'm not genetically a happy person. I think you are. Genetically, I'm not there. So for me, it takes a little bit more effort to choose that happiness. So when I get in that spot, one of my keywords, and I have it like a trigger word, I tell myself to turn left. As if you're driving and someone shouts out, turn left. Well, for me, turn left is a signal to do something that's going to get me in the left side of my brain, so that I can begin. Yeah, it's an interesting way to do it, but I find it, when you're genetically predisposed to being a little bit more pessimistic, you go down that path first. The difference when you practice happiness is you don't keep going down that path. You create a set of tools so you don't keep heading in that direction.
And I think that's so true. I think gratitude is probably one of my favorite things to practice. And every single day, my husband and I have a gratitude jar, and it has grown to it. You know those big 5-gallon jugs that have the spout on the top? It used to actually be an old oh yeah, in my living room. I'm trying to think of what this. It used to be a Harvey. What was made with Harvey Wallbanger? You remember the drink Harvey Wallbanger? And they made this. They made some. Used a specific alcohol. Well, we used to have one of those big tall glasses, and it got broken.
It's an Italian liqueur.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I'll think of it in a minute. My husband's walking in. I'm going to ask him. Galliano. So what we have in our kitchen is we have this jar. It's called the happiness jar or the gratitude jar. So every day we write just one little thing that we're grateful for. And I think sometimes I do it in the morning. Sometimes I do it in the evening. It's whenever I remember. So most time it's when I'm cooking, I'll say, oh, this happened today. If I had a great interview, I might say that. I try to make something different every single day, but it's funny how it changes your whole demeanor and how you handle the rest of your time that day, for instance. So I probably should do it in the morning, but I'm like I said, I'm generally a happy person. But that's a great tip for people, I think, who are not generally happy, because there's always something to be happy for. The fact that you can put 2 feet on the floor is something, or that you can get up in the morning, or whatever it happens. Hot water.
Hot water in the shower. Yeah. I think we take so much for granted because we're always out there. A lot of these practices have to do with being mindful, with being in the moment, with recognizing where you are and what you have. And there are so many, and you know what's interesting about this stuff, Heidi? These are so simple to do that they become very simple not to do. And so people forget.
Right.
Yeah.
People take it
Yeah.
for granted.
I have a
Yeah.
gratitude journal next to the
forget
bed,
them.
and I like to do the exercise taught to me by my teacher, which is called the 3 good things and why, or the 3 blessings and why. You can use either one. So at the end of the
I
day,
love that
you
too.
write down 3 good things that happened to you that day, and you continue writing like why they happened, or you expand on it, because one of the things that the science of happiness has discovered is when you stay with a positive thought for more than 20 seconds, that's when it becomes a positive emotion. So it's not enough to, oh, I'm grateful, I got this great cup of tea. Sit with the cup of tea. What about it are you grateful for? Why are you grateful for it? And those are the kinds of things, when you start writing those things down, you go deeper into your gratitude. And if you do that right before you go to bed, it begins it begins to get you calmed down. And when you do that every day, it creates these new neural pathways in your brain, that because neurons that fire together wire together. So when you keep firing the neurons of gratitude together, you literally build a highway in your brain so that you get there quicker when you need to get there quicker.
So there's a lot of physiological results of practicing these things that we, do. So what are some of the other tips?
Big one.
Yeah, probably a big one for a lot of people.
I think when we let go of ill will towards others, and more, even as important, if not more important, is forgiveness for ourselves. And I find that most people in leadership positions are, they're high achievers. And many high achievers, and I'll put myself in that category, have a bad habit of beating ourselves up when we don't do things the way we wanted to do them. Maybe this wasn't right or that wasn't right. We have to let go of that perfection, if you will. Make sure we're still thinking about progress, but let go of the perfection attitude around it. And be willing to forgive ourselves and to forgive others. There are people in businesses that are holding grudges against the guy in the production department or the woman in the mailroom, like they hang on to them. It makes me crazy. So that forgiveness, but we don't talk about forgiveness in business.
Can you help companies learn to let go of that stuff? Is that some of the things? One of the things that you do?
Surface. The thing is that if I'm there long enough, when I'm engaged as a consultant and I'm when I'm living in their culture and being in their culture and listening to their culture and analyzing their culture and talking about their culture, I can do it a lot better than when I come in for 2 hours to give a speech. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I can, because we change the language. You can't change a culture until you change the conversation. So the first thing to change is how we language things. And I can't begin to tell you what language really sounds like in business. So the first thing, my next one is improve your self-talk. So that plays right into that. Improve your self-talk and improve your language. So how we talk to ourselves is so important. Are we speaking gently and kindly to ourselves? If we're not speaking gently and kindly to ourselves, we're not as likely to speak gently and kindly to another.
Wow.
One of my main teachers in life was Angela Arian, who was a cross-cultural anthropologist. She unfortunately passed away at a relatively young age a few years ago. And one of the things that Angela taught us is that we'll never be able to do anything about violence in the world until we take that violence out of our own conversations with ourselves. So how many times do we trip or do something, and unconsciously say, oh, I'm so stupid, or something like that. And most people I talk to do that, especially, again, the high achievers. If they were trained well, if they had the right kind of coaches and the right kind of parents, they're going, good girl, you did a great thing today. But most people's self-talk is a little less than positive. So with leaders, I believe just
because we expect more of ourselves. As leaders, we expect so much of ourselves, and when we disappoint ourselves, we think we're disappointing everyone. I think that's probably for me, that's the bottom line. I tend not to do too much negative self-talk anymore, but I can remember the days when I did that a lot. I beat myself up so bad every time I made even the silliest little mistake,
Right. Right.
So,
And that's the first
yeah,
habit.
that's true though.
Habit
So
to get rid of. It's a bad habit. Is all that is. It's a bad habit. You know, you're not an
yeah,
idiot. You know you're not this. You know you're not that. But it's something either you heard in your childhood or you picked up from television program. We pick these habits up as we're growing up. We don't know where they come from, and it doesn't matter. We can change it. We can change that.
yeah, yeah.
But it takes that awareness. It takes that mindfulness. What did I just say to myself? Is that useful? Is that going to help me get to where I want to go? Or is that going to hold me back in the past where maybe I was clumsy back then? But if I keep telling myself I'm clumsy, I'm going to continue to be clumsy. So there's that recognition.
Yeah. Excellent. So, so true. And
The
next,
next one is flow. Get into the flow state. And you know what flow is. You know what flow is. Flow is that state you get into where you forget to eat lunch. You forget what day it is. You went, oh my gosh, I got a television program at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Because you get so engaged that you become one with the music, so to speak, one with the activity. This is a really important state for the brain. And what's happening now is we're all multitasking, and what we expect of our staffs is multitasking. Not so good, because the brain can't really do that. The brain might be able to execute sequential activities very quickly so it will appear as if you're multitasking. But every time you switch from one to the other, you put yourself in danger of not doing one or the other or both correctly. So taking time during the day where you can work on activities, and I recommend even for people in call centers that it's a repetitive phone call after phone call after phone call, is that their managers and leaders make sure that there's a small portion of each day when they're working on a project that only has to do with one thing. And they don't have to be, moving from this screen to this screen to this screen to this screen, but have an activity that they can get involved in. And even if it's 15 minutes, something that puts you in flow.
Complete. I think that's a key ingredient. Is a lot of people, if they don't complete something throughout the day, they feel as though the day was wasted. I know for me, I'm not a good multitasker, never have been, never professed to be. When people say they think I'm because I achieve so much every day. I do produce a lot. It's because I work on one thing at a time and finish it most of the time. Or I do the effort I wanted to for that project, put it aside and start another project. But I don't think about that project once I put it aside. And I think that's been the only reason I've been able to do so much writing and all of the other things. And I'm sure you're the same way. And I think a lot of leaders know this. I really have never met somebody who was really good at multitasking. They were good at organizing, if you will, their time. Now, I think that's probably a better description of high achievers, or people, who get a lot done.
I have a little mnemonic that I teach people because, especially managers. I was working recently with a very busy director of a call center, and she was in an open space. They didn't have her in an office with a closed door. And all day long, people felt like they could just come up and interrupt her no matter what she was doing. It'll just take a minute. I only have one question. And, so by the way, they say that when that happens, you lose 25 minutes. So you've got to go back, you lose 25 minutes of productivity every time that happens, because by the time you find your way back to what you were doing, you've lost all this time. Every time we do it. So we got a little construction cone that was about that big. And we made a little sign that said, when you see the cone, I'm in the zone. And everybody was taught that she needs to get into the flow state several times during the day in order for her to complete her work. So it signaled, without being offensive, without shutting people out, she put the little cone up. And I've used this in many companies, and it's really, really, really effective.
I love that. So when you see the cone, you're in the zone. That's perfect. Perfect. Without being offensive. And then people wait their turn.
They come back. They come back. It helps. I know one woman that I worked with out in the Midwest, she did have a door, but they would stand there, like with the nose up against the wall. And so she put a sign on the door each time. She would say, I'm in cone time. She had the cone. They could see the cone. And she would put a timer. She would say, I'll be done at, when you leave one of those little stores and you go out to lunch and it says, I'll be back at 3 o'clock. That's what she would do. very
Oh, I
clear
love
as to
that.
when she would be available and when she wouldn't. And you know what? Her staff learned how to deal with it. They were all happier.
Yeah, absolutely. Because she could focus entirely
Yeah.
on them instead of thinking about the other things she had to do during the
Right,
conversation.
right.
So, yeah. I know I tell my family all the time if they see me like writing or something and then they come in and not that they're interrupting, but they are kind of interrupting because I'm busy. I
Yeah.
work from home. And so then they'll stand there and then I can't give them 100% of my attention because I'm still thinking about that project I was interrupted from completing. And I'll say, give me 5 minutes, let me finish, and then I'm all yours, and it's a hard thing to train, but they finally get it eventually. 7-year-olds don't get it very
Don't
well,
get it
but
very well.
15-year-olds are pretty good.
I have a 7-year-old granddaughter, so when I'm out there, my kids live in California, so when I go out there, I'm there for 10 days, so then there's the, shh, Nana's working. But
I love it.
I once
Yeah.
did a program. Somebody asked me to write a program for them, and I called it Home Alone. And it was about people like us who worked at home and had busy lives. And I worked at home even when I had, when my daughter was home. So yeah, you have to have strategies, and your children and other loved ones have to learn to respect your boundaries and your strategies.
Absolutely. I think we've gone through 5 of the 8.
Okay.
We got 12. So how many more do we have?
There's 3 more. The next one is one of my favorite. It's called savoring. And when I went to happiness school, when I took my happiness coaching, we had to do all these different instruments that measured our levels of happiness and optimism and blah, 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 all that stuff. And back when I studied with Marty Seligman, it was right after he wrote the book, Authentic Happiness. And his theory then, which has changed, but his theory then was that there were 3 paths to happiness. There was pleasure, engagement, and meaning. So one of the tools that we used measured our pleasure, engagement, and meaning. So I was really high on meaning. I was really high on engagement, but I was really low on pleasure, which meant I worked really hard. I knew I had meaningful work, but I didn't take the time I needed. So we had homework and all these classes and groups that we were in a pod group, and so I had to learn pleasure. I had to learn more about, and one of the surest ways to get more pleasure out of things is to stop and savor them. And savoring is this beautiful activity because you can do it before, during, and after. So before, I decided today I was going to allow myself a nice little square of dark chocolate after lunch to kind of give me just a little jolt, because there's a little caffeine in it, right? Before today. So before I ate the chocolate, I thought about eating the chocolate. So, the brain can't tell a difference between something that's real and something that's vividly imagined. So I started thinking, because I have a lot of chocolate in the fridge, what will I have today? Will I have the chocolate with the salt, or will I have the chocolate with the raspberries? And then I took the chocolate out, because this is part of the savoring process. And I broke it, and I put half of it in my mouth and just kind of let it melt. And I enjoyed that. And then I decided to save the other piece. I went in to meditate before we got on the air today. So I saved the other piece for when I came back. So I got to think about it again. And now I'm telling you about it. So every time that happens, my bodies are producing the chemicals of calm, which turn on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system that helps you heal yourself. When we're under a lot of stress, and the body goes into fight or flight and starts pumping out the chemicals of fear, it turns off the part of your body that knows how to heal itself, which is why so many people have stress-related illness, because they're not accessing the natural forces in their body that will help them heal. So by doing little practices like this, you actually can build your immune system. You can build your healing power. It's so amazing what the beneficial effects are. And you can undo the stress that's in your life. So, have a good relationship with your chocolate, Heidi.
I was just thinking about how much self-control that took to eat only half. Because I love chocolate and I have to have 1 or 2 pieces every single day.
It's so good for you.
I love it. And only dark. Yeah, but I just do love it, and but I don't know that I can eat half a piece and then go back to it. I'd be thinking about that whole half a piece while I was doing something else, and my mind would be taken up on finishing the chocolate.
No, I learned it.
I'm amazed, and I really am. Wow, I think that's cool that you have such self-control.
I don't think of it that way. It makes the pleasure last longer.
That's true. Well, I can always have another piece. That's what Oh my gosh. Okay, so I for those people who are counting how many of the 8 tips there are, I like to make sure we get through them. So I think we're up to 6 now.
6 was savor. 6 was savor. So 7 is reframing. And that's looking at look at a situation as if it was an actual photograph. Now that we have so many people using photographs on Pinterest and on Facebook and things like that, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you want to zoom in on one item in the picture. Sometimes you want to zoom out. Sometimes you want to cut off this corner of the picture or that corner of the picture. Well, you can do the same thing with your reality. So you can reframe any situation at all. So you can take a situation that's happening and you can see it as the Chinese glyph for crisis has one picture of danger and the other picture of opportunity. So how can each thing that comes to you be an opportunity? And we typically, because we are hardwired for harder times, we have a negativity bias. So when something bad happens, we tend to focus on the badness of it, as opposed for the opportunity of it. When we were in the middle of recession, when times were really, really tough, I have a client that I worked with for years and years out in the Midwest, and we did positive leadership out there. But then when things got tough, employees were having a hard time. So we actually did happiness seminars there. And one of the questions that I threw out one day that got at first utter silence was, what's good about what's bad?
Wow.
Complete silence. And I didn't give any other explanation. And I just waited. And people started saying things like, well, since my husband's been out of work, I see him more and he's more involved with the kids. We can't afford to go out to eat right now. So I've been cooking more, and I found out that I really like cooking and it's a great family activity. So people started pouring out personal things that were going on there because given the opportunity to reframe the situation, they were able to find goodness.
Yeah. And that's so true. I think you have to look at things from a different perspective in order to have a full perspective of things, because sometimes we only look at the things that are going on in the way that the world sees them and the media is sharing it with us, etc. The media can be our friend or our foe, and most time, they're not the friend, because they're always depicting things in a way that it incites people, I think.
Did you notice that too? I mean, the thing is that if you only look at what's going on in the news, the world is in terrible shape. If you go down several layers and you get into where the communities are, millions of people around the world celebrating positivity, millions of people around the world celebrating happiness, doing random acts of kindness, having gratitude journals. It's amazing what's going on in the world today. But do we hear about it? No. Because it doesn't.
No.
Remember?
Yeah, that's true. That's why I don't watch the news.
Most of us watch a little nugget to get the headline of what's happening. But the one thing that you can do to make your life happier is stop watching the news. And I mean watching, because all the gory stuff. You can read, you can take a small little bit and read on the internet or read on a newspaper, a little bit of news.
That's what I do. I read most of my news from MSN, and I get what I need. I choose the stories I want to read, because when you're watching news, you have to either turn it off or walk out of the room when you don't want to watch a certain thing. Not that I think we should be shut off from what's happening globally. It's just that the way it's presented to us often isn't the full story.
Oh yeah.
Anywhere. I mean, that's what ends up making us crazy. And it incites all of the stuff that's going on. Okay, one more.
One more. We just talked about reframing. Your strengths. Understand what your strengths are and build on them. Research shows that enduring happiness comes from spending time in your strengths, not from spending time doing things that you don't do well, because that's when you beat yourself up. So, and if you're an employer, You need to understand what your employees' strengths are and see if you can focus your attention on that. In order to have a high performance, and the only thing I want to create is high performance workplaces. I want people to thrive. So you need a positivity to negativity ratio of 5-to-1. So you need 5 positive things to every 1 negative thing. That means 5 times more praise, 5 times more admiration, 5 times more recognition, 5 times more celebration. You need 5 times more of the good stuff to each one of the bad things. And people ask me, well, how do you give people bad news? And don't you really need to criticize people? No. You need to coach people towards in the areas where they're not as strong as others. But if you spend 5 times more with them focusing on their strengths, and then you approach them from saying, Heidi, you have great communication skills. Your organization skills are superb. And you know that I've noticed all of your skills. And then I say, there's one area where I'd like to see you get a little improvement. How can we use your strengths of communication and organization and whatever else they are to work on this one area where I'd like to see a little improvement? That's a whole different discussion. Because if you know that most of the time I'm looking for your goodness and I'm looking to see what you do right instead of what you do wrong, then I'm going to trust that you have my well-being at heart, that you're not looking to, I don't even know what the phrases are, sandbag me or, and I think that there's a few things that really drive my passion. One of them is that after 26 years of being a consultant, there's one sentence I've heard more than any other sentence. Let me tell you what it is. How come my boss never notices when I do something right, but when I do something wrong, he's all over me? I've heard that probably 20, maybe 30 times in the course of my career. But that's a lot because that's one sentence said in the exact same way by many different people. There's something there.
Yeah. And that's true. There are a lot of people who only focus on those because they may see the good things that they're doing, but they don't realize the importance of sharing that information.
And I just heard it last week.
Maybe.
Okay, you know what I hear? Isn't that what I'm paying them for? About their strengths, about the good things that they do every day.
Wow.
They sit there and I hear it over and over and over again. Isn't that what I'm paying them for? Why should I have to mention it?
It's just like a child. Positive reinforcement. When a child does the right thing the right way, you tell them that was such a great thing. And we stop doing that when they grow up. We stop telling them, what a great job you just did. And it could be a very small thing like, drinking out of a cup without the sippy top and not spilling it. Or putting all your food on your fork instead of using your fingers to eat. I don't know. I'm talking about really little children, how we train them. And every time they do just a really simple task, it starts from the time they use the potty.
What's so funny about the people that I, deal with in these environments, where I'm teaching, generally they're pretty high level. So at a pretty high level, let's face it, we're self-motivated. No one has to wake us up in the morning and say, it's time to go to work, Heidi. Time to go to work, JoAnna. We just get up and go to work because that's what we want to do.
Right.
But what I hear them say, they don't realize that everybody's not wired like them. So what I'm hearing them say is, well, why should I need to praise them for doing the job? And generally right now, I throw it right back. I said, how many children do you have? And how old are they? I want you to think about how you raised your children. When they went down the slide at the playground, did you say, good job, Jeremy? When first time they went, I usually use that example. First time they went on the potty, did you say, good job? I said, in fact, if you today were to go to a playground, because I do it with my grandkids, go to the playground and just listen. What are we saying? We are positively reinforcing these children for every single move they make. And then when they come into the workforce, you say, why do I need to praise them? Because you raised them that way. And they just sit back in their seats, like,
wow.
Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way.
You're going, oh my God. Busted. Wow. And you know what? There is just so much great information that this could be a week-long Oh, it could be a year-long seminar for that matter. But I'm so glad you were able to share those 8 tips. Let's talk a little bit about your company. Tell us what kind of client you typically work with, and how do you market to them, or
Yeah, I think
how
that's
do
more.
they find out about you?
I haven't been very aggressive about my marketing in the last few years. So it's more that they find out about me. I mostly get my work from referrals or from my speaking engagement. So someone's actually seen my work, see me work. I always ask for a business card. I always offer something. I grew up in direct marketing, so I always have an offer. I always have an offer. So I will say something like, if you leave me your business card today, I will give you a copy of my special report. And so they'll leave me a business card. I will come home. We do something here called aftercare. And so I will send out a list of resources. I'll send what I promised. I might link them to a couple of videos in case they want to show more. It's it's a lot, just like you are, about giving them, creating value. So we create value everywhere along the way. It's gotten a little harder because a lot of people don't want to give up the business cards these days. So I will come home. If I have a list of who's there, I'll come home and, look them up on LinkedIn and perhaps send them something that way. Primarily, I'm my own mailing list, because I've been doing this since the day I've been writing newsletters since the day I started my business. So there's always something. Wow. So we gather cards and put them on the mailing list, and so typically that's where my business comes from. The companies that I want to work for, and most of the companies I do work for, are good and they want to be great. I am not at all interested in working for companies that are broken and want to be fixed. I can remember the exact day I literally, after dealing with a client that, I poured my heart and soul. It was a company up in New York. I poured my heart and soul into this business, and they just weren't getting it. There was a lot of ego involved, and you can only imagine. And I remember standing here looking up in the sky and saying, God, stop sending me these broken businesses. And my business dried up. I forgot to tell them what I wanted. So wow. I got that.
Right.
Literally, I stopped. The broken places stopped coming, because I used to get calls that said, I just lost my #1 client. Come and help. Now I get calls from people who say, we're doing a good job, but how do we get great? How do we get this happiness stuff? So it's really the people that are already moving in the right direction, and what they need is a little wind under their wings.
Right. And you know what? I think you can probably affect more change with them, because the other people, it's probably such a culture shock that half the things that you teach them, they don't implement anyway. Or they try to do a little bit of it, thinking that's going to fix the problem.
I've spent a lot of years where the first thing I would hear is, I want you to go to that department and fix them. Go fix those customer service people. And I can't tell you how many jobs I've been fired from. Wow. Especially small entrepreneurial kinds of companies, where there's 35 to 50 people in the company, and eventually, after I've been in there digging around, all arrows are starting to point towards the leader, and that if the leader's attitude doesn't change, nothing else is really going to have sustainable change. It'll change for a little while, but as soon as the leader comes in and starts looking at what's wrong instead of what's right, it's going to go right back to where it was. Actually, it's worse.
Yeah. So you have to start with the top. You have to start at the top. I think in any good company, it all starts at the top. All right. So let's talk about how you motivate entire organizations to get passionate about customers and raise their positivity.
I wave my arms a lot. No.
Ratios. That's important.
I have this theory. I call it the working relationship tripod. It's as if your business is sitting on top of a 3-legged configuration, and each one of those legs represents a different set of relationships. So one leg represents all your external relationships, your customers, your communities, your suppliers, your vendors, all the people that are outside the company. One leg represents the people inside the company, your employees and your coworkers, all those people. And the other leg is the one we haven't paid any attention to, and that's the inner self. That's the relationship that you have with your work. whether or not you get up in the morning and go, yes, I get to go to work today, or whether or not you get up in the morning and you go, oh, I got to go to work today. You know, there's a huge difference in how you deal with people. So by helping people understand that the inner relationship has to come, you know, the inner game of customer care has to come first. You've got to be working internally first, because when you just start working on yourself, then you can then reach out to others and you play well with others. So having the teachings of the science of happiness now has been so helpful, because when people understand about the happiness set point, and that some of it's genetic and some of it's voluntary, and neurons that fire together, wire together, and it's a habit of thinking, and that happiness is a choice, and it's like a muscle, you can build it. When people hear this stuff, they want to practice it. They want to get better. And that's what I see in my evaluation forms. Thank you for this seminar. This was for me personally, not for the company. Yeah, well, it was for the company, but we started with you. So, you know,
Right. Well, you know, but that's a wonderful insight, that if people realize that it is actually for them and not for the company, they're going to be more invested in it. So that's actually brilliant.
I think one of the very best emails I ever got was from a man in a garbage and recycling company who sent me a little email one day, and he said, my wife told me to write and say thank you. She doesn't know what you did to me, but she's very grateful, and you should keep doing it.
I love it.
Yes, it warms my heart like nothing had ever warmed. Because
oh my gosh,
because I do this, I do what I do because we spend so many hours at work. And if we can improve the way that people feel at work, if we can eliminate the energy drains and give them, when you build on strengths, you've got energy gains, you feel strong, you feel good about yourself. You go home, you have time for your kids. There's some research out there that says the children that do the bullying in schools are the children whose parents are very unhappy at work. And, you know?
Wow.
Well, and think about it, because everything's connected. Everything's connected. So if you create, whether you create a happy company and have a great culture, or you have a toxic culture, it's going to go out through your employees, into the communities, into the children. I mean, when you think about it, when you create that happy culture, everybody's, you know, your suppliers are happier, your customers are happier, the bottom line is happier. You give away, people that are in positive emotion are more generous. So you give to your churches, you give to your community services organizations. There is this spillover effect that spreads out all over the place. That's the stuff that motivates me. It's not that I'm going to make a difference in Heidi's life. It's that Heidi's going to make a difference in how many lives. Yeah.
You only, it's true. You only have, if you change one person, you change a lot of people. So what's been the most surprising thing about the work that you do,
that I'm not booked every day? That's the most surprising thing.
I'm surprised too, really, if you think about it, because we need you so much. We need people like you so much in today's world, with all of the, you know, negative energy that's, you know, permeating on the planet. I think definitely it's important, because we can only keep up our own self-happiness. You know, I mean, like I said, I'm generally a happy person. I'm around a lot of happy people. If I get around negative people, I tend to, they're not my friends, and I tend to lose them pretty quickly, because they affect you, you know, but I think that can be an issue for some people, because they're surrounding themselves by that, you know. We could talk about all of that stuff in the world.
We, meaning businesses, that corporations put so much focus on the numbers, on the metrics, and don't invest in this. You know, they call them soft skills. So what's surprising me is, in a day where we have, you know, 18 to 20 years of science behind this now, what's surprising me is that people aren't getting that it's the soft skills that yield the hard results. Because when you think about the customer experience, which is the framework for everything I do, because that's the world I came out of, when you think about the customer experience is the sum total of the feelings that they have as a result of doing business with you, and whether or not you delivered the value they expected. So if it's all about the feelings, why aren't organizations more emotionally intelligent? But most people, when you
Right.
tell them what are the benefits of doing business here, they give you all the, we have purple cups, we have eyeglass, but it give you the hard stuff. But they don't talk about, you know, my customer needs to feel appreciated. My customer needs to feel cherished. My customer needs to feel valued. My employees need to feel, you know, when you get into that, it's all about feelings. So why not engage people that are willing to help you understand how to create specific kinds of positive feelings? It's still looked at, the majority of companies
I agree.
look at this
I
that
totally
soft.
agree. I think it talks about, yeah. Well, you know, you can think about it this way. Branding is really a soft thing, a soft skill, because it really, if you do branding right, companies that do branding right, they're creating
Absolutely.
emotional connections with
Absolutely.
people. So this is all part of that. It's all
But
part
to
of the
do
whole
branding
branding
right, you have to
strategy.
include the experience. You can't just brand with a logo. You need to brand along with that. You need to brand with the experience. The customer experience is the brand.
Which is, it's an
Yeah.
emotion, though. Again, going back to an emotion. So people, I think, that maybe need to understand that the whole part of this that you're doing has to do with their brand,
Yeah.
and how it's affecting me.
I have a special report, of course, at returnonhappiness.com/happy place, and it's 12 ways to make your workplace a happy place.
So we're going to write that in the sidebar here, so that people who are listening
Do you want
to
me
the
to do that?
replay, if you could do that, that would be great. Over here on this side where it says over here where it says live chat, if you want to type in something, or over on the left hand side, I think where it says questions. I don't know how it looks on your screen because I'm the leader of this, but somewhere where you can write a message, where it says send a message. Do you see it?
I see
Down
it.
at the bottom. If you could type that in, and then it'll be on the replay as well. That would be great, because I think that report, and you know, in fact, since you're doing that, we could talk a little bit about when you talked about. I mean, we didn't really go into a lot of depth on how you promote your business, but if you talk about the speaking and the fact that you give something as part of that whole process, that's a brilliant strategy. Even though a lot of people are doing it, if you're giving something that people want, they're gonna, you know, I mean, I'll speak at conferences where I'll get 10 people coming up out of 50, and I'll speak at conferences where I'll get 100 people who want, and it's the same product and the same thing that I'm giving. It's just the audiences are all, you know, maybe it was the way I talked. I don't know. So, or it could be the audience. I'm not sure.
Sometimes the audience. We also do. We're really getting more involved in Facebook now. I've got more people working with me now, so I can extend myself a little further. We get involved in Facebook. We have, you know, we publish all our content. We charge for very little. We give a lot, you know, give a lot away for free. For years and years and years, I've always said to my clients, if you want to republish my tips, so I've got articles in car washing magazines and all kinds of these little niche, you know, places, because editors are always looking for more content. So I think just, you know, being generous with your work, giving things away, I think that's an important piece too. Really listening for what people value, and then creating products that address what they want. I'm sure there are other ways I market that, you know, I don't think about much. I market one of my blogs by this is for the new book. It's called Practice Positivity. That's funny. I thought I had the orientation backwards so you could read that. It says Practice Positivity. I have a blog called Positivity Practices, and I leave these in coffee shops. And I, because they're so cute, people pick them up everywhere. So I just leave these all over the place, because, you know, it's not getting me a bazillion new subscribers, but it doesn't take many. You know, somebody just might pick one up and say, wow, positivity practices, that's cool. You know?
And you never know when it's going to change somebody's life. So it's important.
I actually,
that's the thing. I think what you're doing is changing lives. Please make sure that you put the report when you get a moment.
Maybe I needed
and I want to also ask. There you go. Keep them happy. All right. So, and then the other thing is, when you get a chance, I'd love for you to write an article for We Magazine for Women, because I think that what you talk about is, our audience would love it. We have a little bit of time left, so let's talk about a couple more things. If you could work with anyone in the world, who would that be and why?
I saw that question, and I can't think of a person. I can think. Yeah, no, I think it would be someone that's on one of those lists of the best places to work for that have already maybe the bottom three, the ones that are already committed. They know it means changing habits. That, in other words, the groundwork is done. So I think if I could work for any company, it would be companies that are already on this path, that are people that just are attracted to what I'm doing, and want me for who I am and how I am. I'm as quirky as they get. So people that are willing to. I'm an author. I'm not a best-selling author. I'm not, all that kind of stuff. But I have a wealth of experience, and I think I'd really like to work with people that are already on the road to doing this, and allow me to give them just that little bit more push and lift.
So here's a thought for you: find out those lists when they're being published, like Forbes book lists. And do you market to them? Do you send them a card and say, "Hey, congratulations for being on the list. If I can ever be of service to you, let me know." Or something like that. I don't know. It seems like a natural fit for you.
And I just passed along. Last year was a phenomenal year for me, but I was working pretty much unsupported. I have a few people that were helping me out, but I didn't have the kind of assistant I really need. I just hired somebody that's going to be able to organize all that. I am a bit of a sort of right brain creative kind of person. So, without that support of someone who's different than you are, because we all have our strengths. And when we hire to our weakness rather than to our strength. So I hired somebody who's really strong in the areas in which I am really weak. So all of that will come.
So important, and that's the sign of a good leader too, because we don't need. I'm not good at math. I know how to do it, and I can read. I can read a spreadsheet and understand it. However, it's not my strong suit. It takes me a lot longer to balance my checkbook than someone who does that effortlessly. So I prefer to outsource that sort of thing.
Anything you're not good at.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. What books are you currently reading, JoAnna?
Oh my gosh.
Or would you recommend?
I just finished an amazing book by John Maxwell called Intentional Living.
Love John Maxwell.
Just finished that, and I was in a book group. Living. So it was phenomenal. We had 35 people, and we were in tables of 8 or 10 or however it worked out that week. So not only did I have my own opinion about it, I got a chance to discuss it. So that was completely amazing. I've just recently read Big Magic, which is Elizabeth Gilbert's book on creativity. I am finishing Buddha's Brain. I read many, many books at the same time. Buddha's Brain is by Rick Hanson. I'm reading Untethered Soul. And so I've got them, they're sort of in different stages. So sometimes it actually takes me a long time to read a book, but there are lots of them.
I'm writing these down because I like to, on a follow-up, I like to let people know the books that our interviewees or our entrepreneurs are reading, because it's important that we can't learn about all these books ourselves, I don't think. I think you can go to Amazon bestsellers, but they're all different types of books that can help us. It doesn't have to be. For years, I was just reading self-help books, and then I stopped reading, and I was just reading internet marketing books. So now I try to do what you do and have a variety because it does help your brain work. Oh, yeah. The whole brain.
Yeah, and then I always try to keep a novel in the house, so that I've got something I can slip into the bathtub with, or, read at night, because otherwise, the wheels keep going and going and going. So I like to do a little of that as well. I'm looking forward to maybe an afternoon on the beach where I can just do that. We'll see.
Well, you have to put it in your calendar. In addition to your own website, what one website can you just not live without?
What one website can I just not live without?
Besides Google. people tell me Google. I'm like, no, that doesn't
No,
count.
I don't. I get a lot of emails. But I don't, when I follow them back to the website.
I mean, is there a website that you use as a resource?
I go to Mind
that helps
Valley
you
a lot. Mind Valley. I take courses there, and I go to the Shift Network, and I go to HeartMath, because HeartMath, I've been trained by them to go. So if I want to recommend one, I would say go to HeartMath, HeartMath, because HeartMath teaches us how to use the electric power in our heart, 60 times more powerful than the voltage in our brain, to bring our stress level down. And they have a ton of resources. And I've been studying with them for about 20 years. And I just love their stuff. I mean, I just love it. It's a research institute. They have something going, the Global Coherence Initiative, they have going to show us that they're trying to prove to the world, and I think it's so, that we are all connected. So when you and I raise our level of happiness, we are helping to raise the exhilaration level of the whole planet.
Yeah, I agree. I would totally agree with you. So what's next for JoAnna,
I've got
Brandi?
so many things working. The e-courses, I'm focused on the e-courses. So hopefully by my birthday, which is in July, we'll have that first course out. We'll be marketing it like crazy. I can't wait. We'll have direct marketing campaigns. We're planning on perhaps going to the happiest cities. There's a geography of happiness. So there are happy cities, there are happy towns, there are happy seaside towns. I'd like to offer my services to towns that are already identified as being happy towns.
I know on MSN I read a lot about the 10 happiest places in the U.S., 10 happiest countries in the world, and that sort of thing. So those are really they're interesting.
I'd like to visit them and soak up a little happiness.
Yeah, and share some too.
There's some little fantasy idea I have, and that's where the ideas come from. Is you start with a fantasy. I have never driven cross country, and it might be fun someday to have a bunch of places where I'm speaking about happiness and sort of make my way to significant places around the country. Perhaps we'll see.
I love it. Well, you let us know about your journey. So how can our audience get in touch with you?
My email is JoAnna at returnonhappiness.com.
returnonhappiness.com.
My website my main website is returnonhappiness.com. And my positivity site, which is the book site, the book that I'm working on, that's positivitypractices.com.
It's not okay. For some reason, it won't let me enter. Okay, Return on Happiness. It worked for the other. Okay, maybe it'll come through now. Okay, there we go. And it's Positivity Practices.
Yes.
Is that with an S?
It's with an S. Practices. And there's another special report there. It's called From Positive Thinking to Positive Doing.
All right. I'll make sure that people get that as well. JoAnna, it has been an absolute delight. I'm so excited that we've crossed paths again and reconnected on at the Floor Speakers, of course, and you're on our show today, and I'll send you the link when it's done. And I just wanted to say thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with my audience.
I can't tell you how much fun this is for me. It's such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure. JoAnna, it's been great. And for those of you listening in on the replay, be sure and visit JoAnna at returnonhappiness.com. Check out Women in E-Commerce at WECAI. That's the producer of this show. My name is Heidi Richards Mooney. Tomorrow we have Mindy Gibbons Klein. She is known as the Book Midwife, and she'll be our special guest tomorrow. So be sure and tune in at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for that show. And again, JoAnna, Brandi, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.